Kicking things off today is our good friend Dixon Jones, joining us from sunny Brighton, where he's on holiday, I guess. And I am jealous. Dixon is best known to everybody here, I think, as as many years he had as the CMO at Majestic, and then
Yep.
and I believe still as a brand ambassador. He also
That's right.
had hands in several pies. He founded Receptional, Murder Mystery Games, DHJ Ventures, and of course, most
Oh, you
recently,
remember you
most
remember Murder Mystery Games? That is old. That's old, man.
going back a ways, and of
Yeah.
course, most recently, Inlinks, which is turned out to be a very impressive platform, a very handy tool, gives some amazing information. So, without any more ado, I shall turn the microphone over to Dixon so he can wow us with his brilliance. Dixon, welcome, thank you, and take it
Amazing.
away.
All right, thanks very much, Doc. Well, actually, that's great. I think then I've got a little bit more time than I thought, so that's cool. We're already ahead of schedule. I assume that you're recording something in case anybody's here before the time. But know your knowledge drafts is what we're going to talk about today. If you want these slides, I'm sure there's other ways of getting them, but you can just email talk@dixonjones.com and put Deep SEO in the title, so I know which presentation to send through to you guys, and I'll be more than happy to send the slides through. Yeah, Doc, if there's ever a recording of this that's public, let me know so I can steal it and rip it and put it on my website. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
As you. Okay, as you know, as Doc said, I used to be the CMO of Majestic when Majestic started in before it even made an office, and that grew up. I kind of pulled back from there about three and a half years ago, I guess, or 4 years ago, really. I wanted to try and semi-retire, but my wife had completely other ideas. And so she pointed to the house on the edge of the village and said, that one there, we want that house there. So I've just moved into that house, but now I've got to pay for it. So I'm still working hard, and that's because I'm now the CEO of an organization called Inlinks, which again is a startup. Myself and a very clever guy from France, Fred Laurent, who's a French SEO and had been doing semantic stuff for about 8 years. He's been working on this, and he's all the brains of the outfit. My only secret in life is always going to business with somebody that owns more of the business than you do, and that's the way that your developer doesn't leave. So basically, that's my only trick. Okay, so. In the next 40 minutes or so, maybe a little more, I'm going to be talking about knowledge graphs and knowledge graphs in general versus the knowledge graph. I'm going to be talking about why topics or entities are replacing keywords in search. And if you've been a long time SEO, then it's very hard to sometimes get your head out of the keyword game and into the entity game, and it's not always so difficult, and hopefully we'll be able to show you why pretty soon. So then we're going to be talking about how you can see how you can see how well Google understands entities in your own content, and we're going to talk about how to improve Google's understanding of the entities, because this is all about SEO, not just about what's Google. It's more about how do we manipulate Google. So here we go. So what's a knowledge graph? You know what? This is a knowledge graph, kinda. This is actually, I took this photograph just as I was kind of learning entities properly and trying to get my head around it. And this is actually a poster in a pub near where I live about beer. And it connects to lots of dots and different types of beer, and is effectively a map of topics within around the concept of beer. And really, when I saw this, I started to understand what knowledge graphs were. They're not that difficult, really. If you think about them as beer on a wall, then it becomes a lot easier. This, however, is not the knowledge graph. It's not the knowledge graph. This is a knowledge panel. And one of the problems with us as SEOs is we kind of keep on diving into new ideas, new innovations, and we have different people around different parts of the world, and we start to overlap phrases. So, so for disambiguation, the knowledge panel is not the knowledge graph. And the knowledge panel is a representation of topics and entities grouped together. However, Wikipedia is a knowledge graph, or at least I call it a knowledge graph. In fact, I think it's a very useful knowledge graph for us as SEOs because it's open source, it's free, and it's edited it's got human touch on it, so and it's continually developing, so it's a very interesting source of data, and it's very, very structured, which we're going to go and talk about and why that's important a little later on. And certainly Wikidata is a knowledge graph because that's fundamentally everything that the knowledge graph is. It's basically a database of ideas, a database of concepts, and so Wikidata is pretty much, purely a knowledge graph, and is very much the same sort of idea as Google's knowledge graph, which of course isn't quite so public. So, so we've been spending some stuff building our own knowledge graph. This is actually a knowledge graph of, if I go in, of I think the InLinks website. It might be my own website, I can't remember. And so these are all the topics that are being talked about on the, let's say it's the InLinks website. So the site is talking about search engine optimization. The site is talking about marketing. It's talking about keyword research. And you remember I said Wikipedia is a pretty good knowledge graph. Each one of these topics is a direct hit with a Wikipedia article. I haven't got access directly to Google's database, so I'm using Wikipedia as my my live version of a knowledge graph that develops a long time. But we've also categorized everything as well. So search engine optimization and marketing and keyword research, it's a lot better. Knowledge graph really is a connected knowledge base. It's a database with connected ideas, and a knowledge panel is a thing in the SERPs. Okay, and the knowledge graph is Google's knowledge graph. Okay, so far straightforward. The next thing is, what is an entity to Google, and where are they used? And they're used in a number of places. They're certainly used in Google Discover. They're certainly used in when you start typing a query and Google suggests, they try and turn that into entities. And you can actually see that if you have a look at Google Trends, because sometimes I'll come on to that one in a second, sorry. But an entity really, by definition, is a record or article or topic in a knowledge base. So it can be a Wikipedia article is really an entity of Wikipedia, or an article in an encyclopedia is an entity of that encyclopedia. Or the beer on the wall, the little thing about German lager is an entity of beer in that context. So it's just an item in a database, really. It's not that complicated. But you can see how it works in Google's Trends, and I think this is quite interesting. If you go to Google Trends and start to type a phrase, as you start to type the phrase, it starts with, a search term because it doesn't know what's happening. But as soon as it starts to identify what you're typing in relation to topics that they understand, Google uses the phrase topics in the front end of its machinery. So if you're looking in the documentation, it starts saying topics. There's a very good chance it's talking about entities, but of course they use that word, which helps to obfuscate when they're actually talking about an entity and when they're not. But as you start typing in internet marketing without the G, it's saying it's a search term, but it's starting to think about, well, maybe it's also about the topic of online advertising. As soon as you type the G, or at least when I did this, when you type the G, it suddenly picks up that actually it's internet marketing is something that we understand, that Google understands, that has a knowledge graph item. In fact, it has at least 3, because it's got one that relates to digital marketing, one that relates to online advertising, and one that relates to search engine marketing. So internet marketing is suddenly 3 different topics. And as soon as you put in any other kind of parameters in a search query, then they can suddenly turn that down into, really understanding what it is you mean. So imagine this being in your search query. You can see how Google is turning the search query into entities and ideas even before it starts to return the results. So an example of that in Google Trends, you put in internet marketing. So let's find a knowledge panel. So Bill Hartzer, who many of you will know, he's got a knowledge panel with internet marketer there. And so the knowledge panel comes out of the items that it's seen that are stored, in the knowledge graph. Unfortunately, if you type in Dixon Jones, you get an architect in London, which is the bane of my life, frankly, even though they went bankrupt last year and they don't even own DixonJones.com. But I have, after many efforts and years at working at this is probably why I started working at it so long. I do now have a knowledge graph, not knowledge panel of my own, but it's been really hard work. So anyway, so going back to Google Trends, one thing about Google Trends before I leave it is please be careful that Google Trends now is blending search terms and entities sometimes in the same trend. So you don't really want to compare Dawn Anderson, the search term, with Il Slawski, the American consultant, or Matt Cutts, now somebody working next to the White House. So be careful not to compare different data types if you're going to use Google Trends now, because you're going to be comparing apples and oranges. Okay, so knowledge graphs, the problems that knowledge graphs you're trying to solve. Okay, if you imagine that the top line of yellow documents is websites on the internet, before knowledge graphs came along, search engines were trying to organize all the information on all those pages on the internet. The problem is that there are millions about how to tie a bow tie. There are millions about Brighton. There are millions about Mexico. There are millions about SEO. So a knowledge graph, if you see it as the big red thing in the middle, is in one sense a list of topics or entities, but it's also a single point of truth for a machine. So they can sit there and instead of trying to work out, what a bow tie is at the point at which you type it, they can have already worked out what a bow tie is and have this single point of truth. Also, they can store that information centrally, and so it doesn't matter if your internet goes offline, your websites go offline after the fact, because they've already stored the information and they know the answer to that information. So it's more robust as long as the knowledge graph doesn't crash, of course, because it's not tied by sites being live. Interestingly, that also means that that it's got to pull information into from the websites into the single point of truth, and so a big part of the world is now about reading that content, breaking it down into those constituent entities or topics, and then using that as a kind of filing system. But also, now that you've got a single point of truth, if you're a search engine, you can also start to take data from other places. So you can take song lyrics, or you can manually input data about how dodgy Doc Sheldon's SEO tactics might be, or why Martin McDonald, who's coming on after me, seems to know so much when you don't know what tools he's got at his disposal. Or by the way, you should look at Martin McDonald's next. He's amazing, by the way. And then the internal, or you can also, you could, in theory, blend it with internal data, which is not suitable for the outside world. So things like Dixon Jones don't show his results because he's got a manual penalty or something like that. So that's kind of one of the problems, that some of the problems that knowledge graphs are trying to solve. However, we're SEOs, and the real thing for us is that we don't really care about that. What we care about is how the hell do we get all of that to then send business back to our website or to our ecosystem. So it's a question of how you align your business so that you're still going to get business in this world of Google scraping, changing, and having its own version of information. So next question: why is the move to an entity-based model so pressing for Google? Why has it been so pressing for Google? One of the reasons is scale. we said that Google had moved from trying to analyze all of those pages and return all of those pages on the fly to trying to understand ideas, and that turns out to be much more scalable than trying to index all of the pages and record information on those and then return all of those. Because if you think about it, there are now trillions and trillions of web pages on the internet, and probably going up in the hundreds, tens of billions every day. Whereas the number of ideas in the world turns out to be, the number of records in Wikipedia, and hundreds of, billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, perhaps, of ideas. Hundreds of billions versus trillions is a big difference. So by crawling through the internet and reorganizing the world into ideas, topics, entities, they're all synonyms, you then reduce the number of records in your database dramatically from trillions of records to billions of records, or tens of billions of records. And also, of course, those records, those entities are not going up so quickly as well. The number of ideas in the world is not growing at the same rate as the number of web pages. So over time, that saving is going to be massive for any search engine. Secondly, entities help Google or any search engine go deeper with less repetition. Talked about the idea of tying a bow tie. There's probably 10 ways to tie a bow tie, but there's probably one that's a predominant way, and then there's the Winchester cut, or the Eton cut, or whatever, and there may be other ways to tie a bow tie. But basically, tying a bow tie is a concept, is an idea, and so you can go deeper into one idea rather than repeating the same web pages that are talking about the same thing all the time. And so we spend quite a lot of time then trying to help a search engine know what its content, what the important content is in a page. So this is sort of a little screenshot out of Inlinks, and I'll come back to that idea a little later. A third reason for this pressing move is because quite a lot of times, and as we're moving forward, that screen is going to become less and less, and we're going to be using our phones. We're going to be just asking a question in a car, and we're going to be using voice and voice responses. So using a knowledge graph to try and inform the answer rather than a list of web pages is great for voice responses and AI decisions where you haven't got a big number of choices. And a fourth reason is that the concepts of topics don't vary between languages. So once you understand that La Tour Eiffel and the Eiffel Tower are exactly the same thing, that allows you to have some saving again, because you can start thinking in something that's a little less prone to change between languages. There's a really good book, Christian Ballog, who wrote Entity-Oriented Search. Funnily enough, since I put this deck together, he's now started working for Google. So he ain't no schmuck. And he has an interesting section on how structured Wikipedia is and Wikipedia pages. And I won't go through the whole lot of it, but we know that Wikipedia is all over the search engines. And so if you type in virtual reality, if you take out the page results, which is pretty much everything, then of course Wikipedia is at the top, Wikipedia is on the side, Wikipedia is pretty much everywhere. But when you go in and look at a Wikipedia article, there's a huge amount of structure in there. So so the article in Ballog's book talks about the structure of the page, starting with disambiguation, then just sort of a summary, and then going into things in a very, very structured way. And all of the Wikipedia articles follow the same kind of logic. But what is interesting is all the internal links on a Wikipedia page. So one of the things for SEOs is to pay attention when you sit there and see that the most prolific site on the internet from a search perspective is linking all over the place. We should probably take that seriously. And of course, Wikipedia, even though there are no follow links aside, is also quite happy to link out quite a lot as well. So and it links out to places that it thinks are authority links. So I would say that you should start thinking about links out of your website as places where you link to places of authority. And I think that's the important idea about external links. But when it comes to internal links, well, basically, links out of a page, whether they're 2 other pages on your website or 2 other pages on other websites, I don't think SEOs are paying enough attention to the importance of outgoing links. Bill Slawski of clicking on one link on a page rather than another link on the page. So there's a lot of thought that went into that even before entities came along as a big thing. So I've often asked myself, how might a computer change the value of an outbound link on a page? What things can it measure? And it's for a different talk, but there's lots of things that it can measure. And you don't have to be a Google to do that. As Doc said, I'm still an ambassador at Majestic, so you won't get away without a Majestic slide in here. Not all links are created equal. Majestic, when it looks at all of the links on a web page, it shows where they are on a page. So this is comparing 6 different link profiles, outbound links from a newspaper article, from a Wikipedia article, and a BBC News article, and a Drudge report. And the yellow lines are links out, and the blue lines are internal links to other pages on the website. And you can see the different profiles. So there's the page is divided into 40 different sections. So this is reading down the page. So you've got all your links are going to be in 1, 2.5 percentile of the page, and you can start seeing some very different profiles. And if I was just looking at these and comparing them, I'd sit there and say, you know what, Wikipedia is very much linking to itself. It's giving itself some authority. It does link out. Majestic.com is very stingy with outbound links. That's too stingy, I'd say. The Drudge report, on the other hand, is rather keen on linking out, and you've got to wonder whether it's got any authority of its own. So, what have we found so far? Check my time case. Fine. I'm going to be fine. And so what have we found so far? Firstly, we found that a knowledge graph helps to create a machine readable point of truth, a single point of truth. Google Trends is an easy way to see topics that Google understands, and understanding entities or topics, they're synonymous in my head, is a pressing issue for information retrieval. Also, the anatomy of a Wikipedia article shows that they do link a lot. And links out of a page can all carry different weights. We assume. Just one warning before I go on: Wikipedia's internal outlinks, so linking out, these links are based on entities, because of course they're linking to other entities, because every page on Wikipedia is an entity. They're not linking based on keywords at all. And I think for SEOs that are sort of used to keywords, this is actually a hard idea to get one's head around. But it's really not that difficult. And fear not, though, because we're now starting to develop tools that SEOs can use to understand this, manipulate this, and hopefully develop better content that is going to stand the test of time in the modern era of entities. So, what does this mean for entities and for SEOs? Well, some of the tools that we've got are, firstly, the most important tool that we need is the ability to convert a page of content or a corpus of content from a load of text to a load of topics or ideas. So that's either called a natural language programming API, a natural language program, or a named entity extraction algorithm, either way around, NLP algorithm or named entity extraction algorithm. And until last week, Google, who's the one at the back here, had a publicly available natural language API demo where you could cut and paste some text and it would show you all of the entities. They've taken that away just last week, but they still have the API itself, so you would have to use the API to get Google's data back, which we do. But if you want one that's still around, that's there now, IBM Watson has one as well, which is freely accessible. And here's there's the URL on the screen. And of course, Inlinks has one as well. You can actually use Inlinks without even logging in. If you go to inlinks.net and scroll down the homepage, we used to have it right at the top, but no one understood what was happening. So you have to scroll down to find a little sort of search box. And you can put a URL in, and it will then produce a list of the underlying topics. So this was the Wikipedia page on virtual reality, and we can sit there and see, right, it's about virtual reality. It's about another thing about virtual reality, which is unrelated, or it's about Wikipedia and some other ideas and some other concepts. And so we can pull out the underlying concepts and ideas through our tool as well. This is the old output from Google's NLP API over the same Wikipedia article. And what they picked up at the time that I did this, and it's all changed a lot now, was a lot of stuff about Sega VR within the Wikipedia article. And when I looked back at the time, this is an old slide, to be honest with you. I saw that Google had the Wikipedia, someone at Wikipedia had managed to put Sega somewhere in the Wikipedia page 12 times. So what they were effectively doing at Sega at the time, as a result of that, was a relation for me. It's not there now, I don't think. I think they've cut it down quite a bit, but it meant to me that as Google were trying to analyze topics on Wikipedia pages, a Wikipedia page could influence a knowledge graph, because Sega were effectively moving the needle on what virtual reality means to a knowledge graph, because I would have thought that virtual reality is all in the category of engineering and robotics. But when I ran this report, Google was saying it was just as much about arts and entertainment, which is, of course, where Sega virtual reality, Sega headsets lie. So this gave us an interesting observation that garbage in can be garbage out on Wikipedia, on knowledge graphs. So if a knowledge graph does its machine learning based on bad information, then it's going to come out with a pretty bad knowledge graph. And Wikipedia is especially vulnerable to being manipulated, and so therefore there's some interesting challenges amongst in knowledge graph builders, because human bias can lead to bias within knowledge graphs, which I think is kind of interesting, and I'm sure the Black Hats will have a lot of fun with that idea. So one other thing that's also important is that Google doesn't report all the entities that it sees that are on a page. Every week we run an algorithm, we compare our own algorithm or natural language processing to Google's, and on average, Google is only reporting around about 15% of the entities on web pages, different for different industry sectors. But this is interesting. Bear in mind, of course, that Google is not trying to tell you all of the entities on the page. It's trying to tell you the important entities on the page. Whereas the job of an SEO-based knowledge graph is to tell you all of the entities on the page so that you can help tell Google which ones are the important ones. But it's interesting that Google's NLP API really doesn't give you that much information, or as much information. So then the next part of my my presentation was then, and I'll still try and get it done in 10 minutes, if that's okay, Doc and Steve. If you can hear me, let me know, feel free.
We hear you.
That's great. So entity SEO then is all about scaling this idea to try and get more traffic and more business. Firstly, you need to identify the entities that are important for your phrase, for your topic, for your business, the entities that are important money ideas. Then you need to do that by reading your own content and breaking it down into underlying topics and entities. You then need to translate those entities into schema so that you can make it very easy for a machine like Google to feed the main entities into its own algorithms and its own knowledge graph. And then the third thing is that you need to connect entities rather than keywords together. By the way, I've got a book on entity SEO which just came out, so find that on Amazon if you want more about it. So the job number one in that idea of identifying the entities, this is done by machine, but you can do it by hand. So I'm going back to the beer idea and the German lager entity within the beer poster that we had at the start. And these are the top 10 websites in the UK that came back for this particular phrase. So we got, Amazon's on there, and Virgin Wines and people like that. And we can sit there and break it down and say, right, Amazon is talking about grocery and Germany and beer and lager and customer and price and premium. And these are all ideas. Whereas the Independent is talking about sausages and Germans and beer and water and booze. So we've got all of these ideas now mapped out. But then we can sort of combine all those and give ourselves some kind of hierarchy. So there's no point in doing an analysis just of the top 1, 2, or 3 web pages. You've got to do at least a decent sample. Say, we use 10 to try and give some hierarchy, because then we can see that lager is a more important concept. Lager, Germany, and beer are more important concepts than products or groceries or reviews. And this is important. You need a decent seed set of authority pages around a particular concept to be able to extract and prioritize which entities are important. And then a machine can very easily see what the important entities are. And then what you can do is you can compare your own content to the content that's the best of breed. So in this screenshot, which is out of InLinks, I'm not talking about hops, for example. So I'm talking about all the ones in green, but I'm not talking about hops. And it would appear that my competitors are talking about hops, and we think that that's fairly important. So maybe I need to talk about hops if I want to be an expert on German lager or seen as an authority. So I can then dive into the topic. And remember, the topic is just a Wikipedia article at the end of the day, so I can see it. It's always got a direct hit with Wikipedia. It's the same as a Wikipedia article. And if I want to write more about hops, then I can see there and see that I want to talk about brewing and beer styles and stuff, and I can see the underlying topics. These topics I might want to talk about would be different if I was talking about hops in the context of cooking or in the context of health than if I was talking in the concept of food and beverages, for example. So there is this is where categories come into play, because they're going to change the game quite a bit. So then when we start to write our stories, when we start to write our articles, we want to link ideas, and we should link ideas in a page, and we should link ideas across pages. So perhaps we might want to say hops have a lot of flavor, and the flavor is what affects the beer style. Or blonde is a orangey color, and this orangey color is shown in a brand of beer called Witchcraft. So connecting those stories is really, really helpful, and you can do it at the page level, but also you can link across. So you can talk about orange on the page about Witchcraft beer, but it can still link through to the page about orange somewhere else on the site. So then the idea is that we then associate pages with topics. So this is DixonJones.com. So I can sit there and say, right, this is my page. I'm going to have a page about search engine optimization. I'm going to have a page about this entity, this entity, this entity. My concept of a knowledge graph, and it's about the concept of confirmation bias. But it turns out that when I write a really good article like that, I'm not really an authority, because I've only mentioned confirmation bias and knowledge graph twice in the rest of my website. So I've not actually built up an awful lot of authority. But those two mentions I can at least link through to the page that's about knowledge graphs and confirmation bias. So therefore, I can use this idea of finding other mentions of my article. You can use it with a site colon if you haven't got an entity-based tool to try and find all the other mentions and link them through to the target page. So what have we found in part 2? Firstly, that entity SEO communicates topic details to and from the knowledge graph. So it's not just about trying to feed the knowledge graph. The trick for us as SEOs is to still keep the business when Google's taken all the data and repurposed it for itself. We also learned that Wikipedia suffers sometimes heavily from human bias, and that can mean that any knowledge graph, not just Google's, can do too. Also, it turns out that tightly themed content and content-rich sites are easier to build knowledge graphs for than ones that are very, very broad. If you've got a page about, if you've got eBay and one of them selling a mug and one of them selling a remote control, it's unlikely that there's going to be a similarity of topics between those ideas, so they can't link to each other. They can't reinforce each other's authority. So Google does have a natural language processing checking tool, but as of last week, you're going to need the API. InLinks has one too. It's free on the homepage. And then scaling internal links is something that Wikipedia does very, very well. And so I think that you guys should too. And I think that's really the information, but the tips and takeaways are: build your site as if it's a miniature knowledge graph. That's my best advice, really. And so that is build it around topics rather than around keywords. Build content pages around the knowledge graph created by the top pages for a given phrase. So if you have a phrase or a concept that you want to rank for, find the top best web pages that are there and data mine that information, break it into its constituent ideas, and prioritize those, whether by machine or by human. Create topic landing pages and make sure you've used web page schema to filter out what the page is about and what the page mentions and what topics are not really important to the underlying concepts on the page. And then internally link ideas, not by keyword but by idea, to those landing pages that you've said are the money pages for your website. And that was it. I hope that the lag is not too bad now. As I say, there's a book there. This is me, and if you did want the slides or some feedback, since I didn't manage to get through it without losing some time, email talk@dixonjones.com with Deep SEO in the title. Please tell me this time that you're still there, Doc or Steve.
Still here, mate. And you actually this time there was. Can you hear me?
You're there.
Oh yeah, and so are you. Yeah,
Excellent.
this time actually there was very little lag or stuttering, so the second go around it actually went a little bit smoother.
Yep, I hear you. Right, I've got to the end. Did you understand enough to ask any questions, or have I run out of time?
Did get a question in from Donna. How difficult is it to create a wiki page? Boy, that's a steep question. I don't know if Dixon can even hear us. We appear to have lost his feed. So I have been a wiki editor, one of the low guys on the totem pole, because I have not been terribly active for probably about 15 years now. I have made some attempts to edit an existing page or create a new page from my level as a noob in the wiki hierarchy. Good luck. It's just, even minor edits, grammatical edits. I have had senior editors kick me out. So no go there if you can hear me at all, Donna.